I'm Rebecca Shewmaker, and these are some thread paintings from my series called Autumn in the Guadalupe Mountains. I make them using my sewing machine, which is back here, and my massive thread collection. I also will use hand embroidery in the pieces as well to add some texture. People often ask me, is there more handwork or is there more sewing machine work? And it really varies piece to piece. It just depends on what texture I'm looking for in the piece. For this series, I visited the Guadalupe Mountains National Park in West Texas. I was looking for the best place to see fall colors in Texas. And the Guadalupes did not disappoint. I really recommend you visiting the park in the fall if you get the chance in the future. The first place I visited was Dog Canyon, which is on the north side of the park. For this piece, which shows the meadow area near the ranger station in Dog Canyon, I really enjoyed stitching the grasses and also the pinks in the mountains that were reflected from the sunrise. From Dog Canyon, I hiked to Lost Peak. The largest piece in this series is a view from that hike. This one has a lot of handwork in the foreground. I really enjoyed hand stitching all the different textures and colors for the vegetation that you could see up close. The next place I visited was in the Pine Springs area of the park. I did the Devil's Hall hike. I just scrambled down Devil's Hall. It's very rocky. I recommend that you take a hiking stick with you if you ever do that trail. But the colors were really unbelievable. Very vivid, very intense. This piece right here shows a maple tree that I saw along that hike. My husband didn't go with me on this trip. So when I was working on this piece, he told me, I think that tree's a little too red, Rebecca. And I said, no, it really isn't. The colors really are that vivid and intense. The next place I visited was the Frijoli Ranch area. This piece right here shows El Capitan in the distance that you can see from the Frijoli Ranch. It's a great place to see the mountains at a distance. Near Frijoli Ranch is the Smith Spring Trail. I hiked this trail in the afternoon, and most of it's an open desert. And if you've ever hiked an open desert, you know it can feel 20 degrees hotter than what it actually is. It was pretty hot that afternoon. I was definitely sweating. But when I got to the springs, it was this oasis of shade, of cooler temperatures, and of beautiful color that you could see. This is the only piece I did of Smith Springs, and it's almost entirely all French knots, which are done by hand. I really liked how the knot texture echoed the texture of the leaves that I saw while I was there. The next day, I visited the famous McKittrick Canyon. McKittrick is the heart of the Guadalupe Mountains. Geologist Wallace Pratt built a cabin there in the 1930s. And he later donated the cabin along with 5,000 acres to the National Park Service. He called McKittrick the most beautiful place in Texas. And in the fall, it definitely is. There was a lot of beautiful fall foliage and leaf color change that I saw along that hike. This piece here shows the view from his back porch of his cabin in McKittrick. There's a lot of different variety of plants and leaves and grasses in this painting. I was really struck by this tree here, which is a madrone tree. It was really fun to stitch this tree because madrones, they shed their bark to reveal this smooth, pinky, peachy color underneath. And so it was fun for me to get to use pinks and purples in a tree for a change. The next place I hiked was the gypsum sand dunes on the west side of the park. It was very cloudy that day, almost obscuring the tops of the mountains that I saw at the distance. The gypsum sand dunes are sprinkled with a lot of different vegetation. I discovered a plant that I hadn't heard of before called desert rosemary, and I featured it in this thread painting. Desert rosemary looks a lot like ordinary rosemary, but it has this wonderful fresh minty smell to it. I also really enjoyed how the vegetation highlighted the wave formations that you can see in the sand dunes. I was only in the Guadalupe Mountains for a few days, and yet I came home and I worked for months and months making 21 pieces highlighting the beauty that I saw out there. I hope you will come to Crackhead Green Gallery and see these thread paintings in person along with all the other pieces from this series. I hope you also have the opportunity to visit the Guadalupe Mountains National Park in the future. Thank you.